taking into account salary cap implications, positional needs and circumstances related to both teams and players. Here are 32 somewhat feasible off-season trade scenarios that would be ideal for each NFL team. The players listed as potential trade candidates are either widely rumored to be on the block or easily connected to said block due to large salaries, expiring contracts and/or problematic dynamics surrounding their current situations. A Bleacher Report old-timer Larry Fitzgerald is back for another year in Glendale, but the Arizona Cardinals need a younger receiver who can act as more of an outside playmaker for second-year quarterback Josh Rosen. While Green of the Cincinnati Bengals hasn't been rumored as a trade candidate, the Cardinals should inquire. It's entirely possible the frugal Bengals will lose Green when his current contract expires next offseason, and owner Mike Brown might prefer to get something for him now while saving $15.2 million in salary cap space. Potential trade: Cardinals acquire A.J. Green in exchange for a second-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. Another team that might consider trading a highly paid star as it rebuilds. The Buffalo Bills, who have the cap space to retain veteran pass rusher Jerry Hughes but might prefer to save $10.4 million and get something for Hughes ahead of a contract year. Potential trade: Falcons acquire Hughes in exchange for a third-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. It's no secret the Baltimore Ravens intend to get rid of quarterback Joe Flacco following a season in which rookie first-round signal caller Lamar Jackson emerged. A win now would be if the team could create enough interest in Flacco to fetch something in exchange for him in a trade. Potential trade: Washington Redskins acquire Flacco in exchange for running back Chris Thompson via Bleacher Report. 2 years ago, the Carolina Panthers made a major mistake when they signed offensive tackle Matt Kalil to a 5-year, $55.5 million deal. Now, their top priority should be to unload Kalil's monster contract. Potential trade: Panthers acquire quarterback Drew Stanton from Cleveland Browns in exchange for Kalil via Bleacher Report. If the Falcons were to acquire an expensive pass rusher like Hughes, that could lead to a domino effect that just might send Vic Beasley to a spot like Chicago, where the Bears would probably love to complement Khalil Mack with a relatively inexpensive former Pro Bowler. Potential trade: Bears acquire Beasley from Falcons in exchange for a third-round pick via Bleacher Report. Andy Dalton's key statistics have regressed since he posted a career-best passer rating of 106.2 in 2015, and that isn't likely to change at this point in his career. But it's entirely possible the team could get something back for Dalton, especially if a quarterback-needy team thinks he can put them over the top at a fair price. Potential trade: Jacksonville Jaguars acquire Dalton from Bengals in exchange for a second-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. Donald Penn will turn 36 this offseason, but his position has a long shelf life, and the young Browns could benefit from his wisdom and experience in the locker room. Regardless, he'd be a relatively inexpensive upgrade on Baker Mayfield's blind side, and he'd cost only $7.6 million in the final year of his contract. Potential trade: Browns acquire Penn from Raiders in exchange for a second-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. Now that Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith have emerged, there isn't much room left for Sean Lee with the Dallas Cowboys. But Lee is the type of defender Bill Belichick would love to get his hands on as a late-career role player. It just so happens the Cowboys could use a safety, and the Patriots' third highest-paid player is a top-notch safety entering the expensive final year of his contract. The Pats don't have a lot of money to spend this offseason, but they could free up $13.4 million by trading former Pro Bowl safety Devin McCourty. Potential trade: Cowboys acquire McCourty from Patriots in exchange for Lee and a sixth-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. It's easy to envision John Elway falling in love with Stafford in his prime, which is fair because he's got elite talent, he's put up big numbers, he's somewhat of an Iron Man, and he's been to a Pro Bowl. In his prime at age 31 and with more complementary talent than he's typically had in Detroit, Stafford could take that next step in Denver. Potential trade: Broncos acquire Stafford from Lions in exchange for a first-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. The guy's incredibly talented, but it just isn't happening in Detroit, and the Lions don't appear to be on the verge of contention. They should do everything in their power to dump that albatross of a contract and start from scratch at the quarterback position. Potential trade: Lions trade Matthew Stafford to the Denver Broncos in exchange for a first-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. Both tight end Jimmy Graham and pass rusher Nick Perry are potential cap cuts for the Green Bay Packers, so general manager Brian Gutekunst would probably jump at the opportunity to save even more money by dealing either player before having to release them. Potential trade: New York Jets acquire Graham for a 7th-round pick. Indianapolis Colts acquire Perry for a 7th-round pick via Bleacher Report. We have the Browns landing Penn in their best-case trade scenario, but the Houston Texans could be in on those trade sweepstakes as well. After all, thanks at least partly to terrible blocking from bust left tackle Julian Davenport, quarterback Deshaun Watson was sacked a league-high 62 times in 2018. And the Texans also have plenty of money to spend this offseason. Potential trade: Texans acquire Penn from Raiders in exchange for a 2nd-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. Some of these are more far-fetched than others, but with Dee Ford and Chris Jones both due mega paydays in the next 2 off-seasons, the Kansas City Chiefs could decide that Justin Houston's massive contract is no longer tenable. A team that struggled mightily on defense despite the presence of Ford, Jones and Houston really afford to commit so much money to one position group. The Indianapolis Colts should at least inquire. Potential trade: Colts acquire Houston from Chiefs in exchange for a 3rd-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. Dalton hasn't been able to put the Bengals over the top, but the Jacksonville Jaguars might believe their supremely talented roster could give him a better chance. Potential trade: Jaguars acquire Dalton from Bengals in exchange for a 2nd-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. The Chiefs made 2 blockbuster trades last offseason, so don't rule out the possibility that they deal Houston away and then set aside some of that found money before making the Jaguars an offer they can't refuse for star cornerback Jalen Ramsey. Potential trade: Chiefs acquire Ramsey from Jaguars in exchange for a 1st-round pick and 2nd-round pick via Bleacher Report. The interior defensive line isn't a particularly strong area for Los Angeles. Darius Philon, Damian Square, Isaac Rochelle and the 34-year-old Brandon Mabin are all slated to hit free agency, while Corey Liuget is entering the final year of an expensive contract. Butler could immediately play a major role there. Potential trade: Chargers acquire Butler from Panthers in exchange for a 4th-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. The argument, essentially, is that if the Rams don't value Todd Gurley enough to make him a focal point of the offense in critical late-season, playoff games, they shouldn't be paying him. The team insisted time and again that Gurley was healthy while he continued to basically split time with journeyman C.J. Anderson, which is ridiculous considering the All-Pro running back's record-breaking 4-year contract worth $57.5 million, including $45 million guaranteed. Potential trade: Rams trade Gurley to Raiders in exchange for a late 1st-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. A team that is clearly in rebuild mode won't likely be wheeling and dealing in a major way this offseason. And there's a good chance Ryan Tannehill's contract will force the Dolphins to release rather than trade him. So it would be a victory for Miami if it were simply able to get something back in a deal for Tannehill. The Dolphins aren't getting a premium draft pick for a middle-of-the-pack starting quarterback who is due more than $51 million the next 2 years, but in a quarterback-needy league, they can hope for a middle-round pick as a result of a perceived bidding war on the open market. Potential trade: Dolphins trade Tannehill to Broncos in exchange for a 4th-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. Yeah, if Penn is indeed made available by the Raiders this offseason, he'll be a hot commodity on the trade market. That's because bona fide left tackles are so hard to find, there are none slated to hit the open market, and teams would hope the Penn could do for them what Andrew Whitworth did for the Rams the last 2 years. Count the Minnesota Vikings among potential suitors who would drool over a player like Penn. Potential trade: Vikings acquire Penn from Raiders in exchange for a 2nd-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. The Blake Bortles experiment hasn't worked out in Jacksonville, but the Patriots have a knack for taking other teams' failures and turning them into success stories in Foxborough. So if the Pats sent a middle-round pick to Jacksonville in order to secure Bortles as a backup, would it really be shocking if he eventually excelled as Tom Brady's successor? Potential trade: Patriots acquire Bortles from Jaguars in exchange for A fifth-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. The New Orleans Saints are in superb shape and low on cash, which is why Saints fans might want to limit their expectations when it comes to ideal off-season scenarios on any market. Still, they could use a strong presence at the tight end position, and it just so happens the Colts have two high-quality players entering contract years in that spot. Eric Ebron might not be available following his breakout 13-touchdown season there, but that campaign might make Jack Doyle a little more expendable. Potential trade: Saints acquire Doyle from Colts in exchange for a fourth-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. It doesn't appear the New York Giants intend to trade superstar wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. But every player is available for a price. Beckham has caused at least a few headaches during his time there, and reports last offseason indicated the team could consider dealing OBJ in exchange for, at the very least, 2 first-round picks. Potential trade: Giants trade Beckham to Raiders in exchange for 2 first-round draft picks via Bleacher Report. The rebuilding New York Jets can't afford to give up 2 first-round picks in a trade for Beckham, but they do hold the No. 3 overall selection in April's draft. They need an established offensive weapon to work with young quarterback Sam Darnold, and they already essentially share a home with the Giants. Potential trade: Jets acquire Beckham and a second-round draft pick from Giants in exchange for the No. 3 overall pick in the 2019 draft via Bleacher Report. Earlier we connected the dots on a potential Ramsey deal to the Chiefs, but one of Kansas City's biggest rivals might actually have more ammunition and inspiration to make a trade for the Pro Bowl corner. After all, the Raiders hold 4 of the top 35 picks in the 2019 draft. They have far more salary cap space than KC and almost everyone else, and they're in dire need of a playmaker in the secondary. Potential trade: Raiders acquire Ramsey from Jaguars in exchange for 2 first-round draft picks via Bleacher Report. The Philadelphia Eagles look as though they'll be strapped for cash this offseason, which could make it hard to justify paying impending free agent running back Jay Ajayi. That's especially the case because Ajayi is coming off a torn ACL, and he wasn't exactly dominating before that. A cheap solution for a team that is in win-now mode might be to make a strong offer to the Bears for running back Jordan Howard, who has a Pro Bowl nod on his resume along with 25 touchdowns in 3 seasons but is entering the final year of his rookie contract. Potential trade: Eagles acquire Jordan Howard from Bears in exchange for a third-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. At this point, a team that typically operates conservatively in February and March might simply have to hope that it'll get a home run offer for Antonio Brown. After all, the 30-year-old makes big money. He's probably on the verge of a decline, and the Steelers are in good shape in the receiving core with Juju Smith-Schuster ready to move into the No. 1 role. What would a home run look like? Jason LeCanfer of CBS Sports reported last month that the Steelers want a first-round pick for Brown, and it's possible they'll get something close to that from a cap-rich team in a bidding war. So let's go with that. Potential trade: Steelers trade Brown to San Francisco 49ers in exchange for the No. 36 overall pick in the 2019 draft via Bleacher Report. Amazingly, the best-case scenario for the Steelers is identical to that of the 49ers. San Francisco's number 2 overall selection is far too high a price and is unrealistic for the Steelers, while a high second-round selection seems fair on both ends. The 49ers desperately need a top-end receiver for quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, and they have the cap space to cover Brown's significant salary. Potential trade: 49ers acquire Brown from Steelers in exchange for the No. 36 overall pick in the 2019 draft via Bleacher Report. If Ramsey becomes available via trade this offseason, the Seattle Seahawks are a logical team to jump into those sweepstakes alongside the aforementioned Chiefs and Raiders. The Seahawks proved this year that they can avoid a full-blown rebuild despite the fall of the Legion of Boom, but that secondary still requires a revamp, and Ramsey is the perfect candidate to lead Legion of Boom 2.0. Potential trade: Seahawks acquire Ramsey from Jaguars in exchange for a first-round pick and DT Jaron Reed via Bleacher Report. Final shout-out to Penn, who spent the first 7 years of his career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and looks like the only high-end left tackle trade candidate now that his Raiders have used a first-round pick on a blindside heir apparent in Colton Miller. Potential trade: Buccaneers acquire Penn from Raiders in exchange for a second-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. If Houston happens to become available via trade this offseason, we listed the Colts as a hardcore potential suitor. But Indy could get a fight from a division rival, and the bad news for the Colts is the Tennessee Titans have more draft capital and enough cap space to handle Houston's monstrous contract. There's plenty of room for Tennessee's pass rush to improve after that unit ranked in the middle of the pack in terms of both sacks and sack rate in 2018. And there should be plenty of opportunities on the edge with Brian Orakpo retiring and Derek Morgan's contract expiring. Potential trade: Titans acquire Houston from Chiefs in exchange for a third-round draft pick via Bleacher Report. If Alex Smith didn't suffer a terrible leg injury in the fall, Antonio Brown would be the obvious trade target for the Washington Redskins. They desperately need an elite receiver. But because Smith could miss the 2019 season, the Redskins have to focus on acquiring a new starting-caliber quarterback. In a perfect world they would get Nick Foles via free agency, but if they go the trade route you'd have to think Dalton would be a prime target. Potential trade: Redskins acquire Dalton from Bengals in exchange for a second-round draft pick via Bleacher Report.